It seems we never get to touch the topic on how to profit from the logical use of time, so we can't stop it.
But then Brother Lex, he comes on and he says, you know, I want you guys to talk about the papal bull and dumb diverses. And it had been on my mind, like I said, for about a month and a half. How can I make this person understand what slavery really is? And, you know, the word papal bull is a legally binding command or decision entered on a court record on behalf of the Pope. You know, so the Pope puts this in the decree, and he says, this is what we're going to do, and it is legally binding. So Pope Nicholas V issued a papal bull, Dum Diversis, on 18 June 1452. It authorized Alfonso V of Portugal to reduce any Saracens, that's Muslims, pagans, that's us, or any other unbeliever into perpetual slavery. This facilitated the Portugal slave trade from West Africa. Now, this basically tells Columbus he could come here and kill everybody, but you know he went a little overboard. I have to say just a little bit, but they reined him in not before he did a whole lot of damage. Now, when he was in prison in later years, he reflected on what he did, and he was looking at the text, you know, Israelite text, basically the Old Testament or records or holy records, and he realized that he was in prophecy. And basically, the Pope says, we grant you kings of Spain and Portugal by these present documents with our apostolic authority and full free permission to invade, search out, capture, and subjugate the Saracens, that's the Muslims, and pagans, that's us, and any other unbeliever and enemies of Christ. They did this in the name of Christ. They came over here in the name of Christ. That's what the Crusades were about. Spanish Inquisition was about. Slavery was about.
Dum Diverses, 1452. We've read it, you know. The King Lex Will himself is just breaking it down. Author Scott Arthur Clarke. My man is breaking it down. Actually, you can click on Arthur Clarke's link. The Dumb Diverses is down there. Go read it. I'm just here to tell you again to go read Dumb Diverses. But I appreciate what Lex is bringing out in the unity aspect, is that we act together. The unification of having a unified thought, a unified plan, something simplistic. If it comes from if it comes from the Creator, it's always simple. You always can break it down into energy, frequency, vibration. So what's the vibration of Dumb Diverse? It's the Papal Bull. What's the vibration of Pope Nicholas V and granting the kings of Spain and Portugal his apostolic authority over us in the Western Hemisphere? See, when someone says they have power, power is relative. It's relative to who gives a fuck. If somebody don't give a fuck about your power, you ain't got power until you show them power. You slaughter millions and millions of people. We call that power. I say it takes more power not to slaughter. It takes more power not to kill. Or there wouldn't be commandments that tell you, don't do this. I know it's hard not to kill your brother sometimes. I know it's hard sometimes not to honor your father, your mother. Sometimes they tripping. I know it's hard, man, to keep a day set aside because everybody likes to do stuff on Saturday. That's just everybody's day, and I can't get the family. That's every holiday, everything always got the thing with the family. Oh, grandma's in town type of thing, and it's always pulling at your emotion, but you're out of order. It's hard to tell your family that because they are in chaos. If they don't know who they are, how can they not be in chaos? If they can't teach you who you are, how can they not be in a chaotic state? If I take you off of the land you know and completely take you out of the heritage you know, take away the language you know and the gold you know, so that you don't know no more, will you be in order by default or chaos by default? And if we're in chaos by default, well then, we could ask the question, does the Dumb Diverses have the relevance that Lex Will is bringing out that should make every so-called African American black leader stop in their tracks and say, nigga, what? Nigga, who? Who's granting permission to slaughter the Saracens and pagans? Just code words for black people that aren't rocking with our idol we trying to push on them. Sadduceans and pagans. We call them heathen. They call us pagan. We call them pagan. They call us pagan. But this Pope has the cahoots. He has the stones to say, I'm going to grant my homies, the Spaniards and the Portuguese, my full authority. I'm giving my full authority for them to search out, invade, subjugate, to steal everything and take everything and put us into perpetual servitude. You got the link. Arthur Clarke just dropped it. Lex Will always drops it. I'm always going to keep dropping it because that's one of the most important, if not the most important document that puts you in slavery. So when Lex Will says, can all of my brothers and sisters give a big energetic power to shed light on one of the most important documents that says literally, I grant kings of Spain and Portugal. So what did the Spanish and the Portuguese do to us copper-colored races found here in the 1828 Webster Dictionary? You got the links. Copper color races, the aboriginals. Copper color races, the aboriginals. Copper color races, the aboriginals. This is what a penny used to look like. This is like as close to copper as I can find right now. Alright? You know, grandma used to have the whole bracelet. They used to put the stuff in, like, you know, help your bones and your tendons and whatever. You know, the energy, man. We're gone. Are we in order or chaos? So what put us in chaos is what Lex Will is bringing out. Why are we working together? Why is this so easy all of a sudden? Why is it so easy to understand all of a sudden? Because time's up. I mean, I'm 36 years old. I lived my whole life thinking I'm just black, or I was a Christian, or I was a this, or I was a that. I was a this, you know, I'm a noob, you know what I mean? I'm a kappa, you know what I mean? You know how it is, you know how we do. And the real thing is, man, you've been invaded. You've been invaded. The Pope gave them full permission and authority to search out and invade and take everything from us, specifically here. It says to search out the people of the Indies. Read it, please read it. If you do nothing else tonight. It's only a paragraph, read them verses. The Papal Bull 1452. So when they came and invaded, and when other people started making treaties with these invaders, it was a wrap. But they were given the power from their king. Is their king your king? Has their king declared rulership over you? Well, according to their documentation, yes. According to our power, there's only one. But we turn our face away from the Creator. He turns their face towards us. You turn your face away from order, chaos is going to rule you.
Dumb verses 1452. How your parents were enslaved. Okay, I want to make a quick video going about dumb verses, which was a decree made by Pope Nicholas V. In this decree, basically, he authorized, that's the Catholic Church authorizing the capture of Saracens and pagans, that's people who are non-Christians, to capture them and put them into perpetual servitude. That is slavery forever, and their successors forever. So I'm going to quickly read this one from Wikipedia, then I'm going to go on to another article. I want to make it fairly quick, you know, but to explain everything as I go along. Okay, Dumb Verses is a papal bull issued on 18th June 1452 by Pope Nicholas V. It authorized Alfonso V of Portugal to conquer Saracens and pagans and consign them to perpetual servitude. Pope Calixtus III reiterated the bull in 1456 with Inter Caetera, not to be confused with Alexander VI, renewed by Pope Sixtus IV in 1481, and Pope Leo X, that's the 10th, Pope Leo X, in 1514 with precise denotinus. I don't know, I probably said that wrong. I know I said that wrong, but who cares? The concept of the consignment of exclusive spheres of influence to certain nation states was extended to the Americas in 1493 by Pope Alexander VI with Inter Caetera. Right, 1493 is also an important date because, as you know, you should know that Christopher Columbus discovered America in 1492. He then returned, telling Spain, the empire, or whoever you want to call them, the crown, about what he saw in the Americas. And what you have here is in 1493, the Pope has extended the papal bull Dum Verses to include the Americas. This is when they're enslaving everybody. So what I found was I found an translation from Dumb Verses, which was translated into English. It comes under this title here, and I've got it there. So they translated into English. I've already blown it up on screen, and it's all through here. But I'm just going to read through some of the parts. You know, it's a bit verbose. Okay, where are we going to start from? Okay then. Okay, Your Royal Majesty, in the most sacred intention of his kind, we grant to you the full and free power through the apostolic authority by this effect to invade, conquer, fight, subjugate the Saracens and pagans and other infidels and other enemies of Christ, and wherever establish their kingdoms, duchies, royal palaces, principalities, and other dominions, lands, places, estates, camps, and any other possessions, mobile and immobile goods found in all these places and held in whatever name, and held and possessed by the same Saracens, pagans, infidels, and the enemies of Christ, also realms, duchies, royal palaces, principalities, and other dominions, lands, places, estates, camps, possessions of the king or the prince, or of the kings or princes, and to lead their persons in perpetual servitude, and to apply the appropriate realms, duchies, royal palaces, principalities, and other dominions, possessions, and goods of this kind to you and your use and your successors, the kings of Portugal. Right, that's the first Dum verses, and basically what they are saying is every single person, doesn't matter what they are, principalities, kings, kingdoms, this and that, all of the possessions, whoever they are, wherever they may be, you take them for yourself and you give them to us as well, and put them into perpetual slavery. That's what it is, perpetual slavery. So we can just simply just go to Etymology Online. If the internet's slow, my bad. Perpetual. So you just, it's not that hard. Perpetual from old French, 14th century, from old French perpetual, without end, perpetual servitude, and directly from the Latin perpetuus, whatever, universal, in medieval Latin permanent servitude, continuous, universal servitude. Okay? To seek the aim of relating perpetually. So that's what it is, perpetual servitude.
I think we always wondered why did they think it was right or just to do what they did was, to take our lands and to push us off our lands and try to eliminate us as a people. And then we discovered this doctrine of discovery, and it just kind of made things understandable as to where they got their direction from.
When Columbus landed, and he went back, and he reported, and they said then, the leaders, and the Vatican was the most powerful voice in the world at that time. A papal bull, 1493, 1 year later. If there are no Christian nations in this new land you have discovered, I declare those lands to be empty. Terra nullius, very old Roman law that had been exercised in Africa, India, Europe. Further, if there are people there and they are not Christians, they do not have a right of title to land. They have only the right of occupancy. From our perspective, the same right as a rabbit running on the ground, or a turkey, or a deer, or a buffalo, or an Indian. They do not have a right of title to land. 1823, Supreme Court Justice John Marshall adjudicating the case, Johnson versus McIntosh. Two white men arguing over Ohio Indian land. He says, you boys have it all wrong. Don't you understand? This was settled long ago. They don't have a right of title to land. And he moved that principle into U.S. federal law, 1823. The doctrine of discovery became the doctrine of law today. Christian doctrine, specific. Wasn't Muslim doctrine, wasn't Jewish doctrine, Christian. And it prevails. It's here, it's a reality, but most people don't understand that, and most people don't know that. We didn't even understand that on 1990, 1991, when I first really said, wow, what's the doctrine of discovery? What is that? A young man by name was Steve Newcomb said, I got something, you guys gotta see it. Came out of Peru. Came out of people down there that were really digging. It was a unspoken conspiracy by states going on all those years. Shh, don't tell the Indians. We found out anyway, eventually, finally. 2007, Oneida versus New York, court case. First notation by a Supreme Court Justice, doctrine of discovery. 2007. It's not alive. I think it's alive and well. 30-year court case for Onondaga Nation, dismissed out of hand. Oh, you guys were too slow, it's too late. Let's make up, new latches, we'll call it. Besides, it's disruptive to our people. That's what the justice said. It's disruptive. No discussion about our people and about justice and about what's right. The American people don't know about this. Well, it's time they learn. It's time they learn because it's going to take all of us. It's going to take all of us. And I would be very, very, very careful about stamping out the last place that's holding the line the hardest. Haudenosaunee Six Nation. That's holding the line the hardest. For the common good. For the good of all. For the future. That's what I have to say.
We look around us and we know that there's something wrong. Because your neighbour next door is a nice person, your family are nice, people you work with are nice. People want to have a nice society where we can live in peace and just live and be free of wars. So you think, well, where's it coming from? Where is this a constant tribulation that we have to go through? Now think 500 years back. If you think we haven't got it so bad, well, these days, 500 years ago, the Catholic Church, this is a depiction of some of the chambers of torture in the Inquisition. Now, you guys could easily be classed heretics and you could have been led to the Inquisition. So, you just think back to those days, the Inquisition and the Crusades and all the Dark Ages and how much our brothers suffered, mankind suffered. And we see now that we know things are really gone pear-shaped. What's the origin of it? Well, I'm going to expose it. Expose it with a little bit of history. The Catholic Church, the Roman cult, has been very, very, very busy in the last couple of thousand years, starting with the Julian dynasty, then the Flavian dynasty, then the Antons, the Antonys. We had the empire. Rome was a republic, became an empire. Just like that, overnight. They killed Julius Caesar, bang, Augustus. It's an empire. This empire is our enemy, as you will see, because it has morphed as it's gone through the ages with the backing of the Roman cult and a very, very dark priesthood, who through their sorcery and evil and their papal bulls, they seal those papal bulls, they put a spell on them, they put them in their vaults, and what is written on those papal bulls goes. Why? Well, because they're sorcerers. And because when you make a claim of right, which in law means, hey, these are mine, I'm claiming them. Well, I've got the highest claim of right because they're in my hands. I brought them here. The evidence is there. So they're mine. What the Catholic Church did in 1302, very, 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 very powerful date in history. Pope Boniface VIII very similar to my name, by the way. My name's Bonacci, and that is, bon means good. Now get this, right? Face means to do in Latin. Do-gooder. This guy was a contemporary of Dante Alighieri. Dante Alighieri, who wrote Paradise, someone help me, the Divine Comedy. He condemned this guy to the bottommost parts of hell for how wicked Pope Boniface is, and you're going to see. There's his tombstone. You see the crown? It's a double crown. Put that on because King Philip in France had a crown. And Prince Philip was a nasty, nasty guy. He's the one who in 1307, get these dates, they destroyed the Knights Templar. They had to, because they were rivals. And they were doing things the right way, the original Knights Templar. That's when Philip and Clement, the Pope, after Boniface, they had Jacques de Molay in prison for 7 years. They smashed every bone in his body. They blinded him with hot irons, roasted his testicles in oil. They did everything to that man with their little devices. This is the sort of devices that the Roman cult has used for a long, long time, and they're still using them in a spiritual sense in the courts. And I'm going to show you this. The courts are run by these people. Everything that happens in court is ecclesiastical. Everything. I know a few of you know this, so it's not a surprise, but some of you may not. But what I'm teaching tonight, I only got an inkling of three years ago. But the stuff from these websites, you might want to put these down. These are all linked to my website, universaltruthschool.com. So if you've got a pen, you might want to write this down. I'm leaving this up for a bit. But most of the information that I'm telling you, you can source here. And it's Frank O'Collins in Sydney runs these. And he's going to, he's basically the information comes from here, so you can source that here. Now, back to Boniface, our little friend. So, he put that second crown on his head to up do one up on Prince Philip. So they got together, the Vatican and Prince Philip, and they destroyed the Knights Templar. But here, what happened in this year was this guy, Pope Boniface VIII, in 1302 created the first express trust in history. What's a trust? Well, the Crusaders were going off to Jerusalem, leaving their homes, their palaces and their riches behind. So they developed an idea that they would say to their most trusted friend, you, I want to hand over my estate to you in trust, and I'm off to Jerusalem, I'm fighting for Christ. That's what the Crusades are all about, isn't it? That's another story. Anyway, so when I come back, you're my best friend. You're the best person to give my property to in trust. So he becomes the trustee, the owner of the property. What would happen was some of these knights would come back, and the guy that their best friend that they left these treasures with got used to the treasures and decided that they would keep them. And guess what? The courts would not support the knights because the trustee had the right to keep the property. That's how the trust started. It worked. They worked for most people, but for some of them, they didn't get their property back. What happened was this guy and the Catholic Church, always desiring to control with their inquisitions, decided that they would create the first express trust in history. All right, that trust is called Unum Sanctum. What does the papal bull say that they created to stick in their vault and put their spell on that has cursed us so much, this Unum Sanctum? It says that all the world and all the souls in it are ours. Remember the right of claim? This is mine. Well, a claim of right. They made a claim of right. They rocked up, sitting on top of the world, look around, seeing all these people sleeping, got all these gold in their vaults and all this power, and they said, we own the world. And so they do, because no one has challenged that. No one has challenged Unum Sanctum, this papal bull. It's in the vaults. And it's a curse on mankind, and I'll show you how. This was the first express trust in history. So they have claimed the whole world and all the souls therein. And you will see, by virtue of your birth certificate, that that is the title of your soul that they own in their registries. They have registered you. And that is the title to your soul. So what you're going to learn in the second half of this presentation with Serena is how to collapse those trusts, because it's the only way to get out of the system and claim your dominion as children of God, of the universe, and not as their slaves, as people lost at sea, incompetent, because that's how they consider you when you walk into court, an incompetent, dead, with no soul, because they own it. And those black judges who are priests of Baal, they are ecclesiastical. And I'll show you that after we go through a little bit more history. This is painful history.
It is the world that has been pulled over your eyes to blind you from the truth. What truth? That you are a slave, Neo. Like everyone else, you were born into bondage, born into a prison that you cannot smell or taste or touch. A prison for your mind. Unfortunately, no one can be told what the Matrix is. You have to see it for yourself. This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill. The story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill. You stay in Wonderland. And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. Remember, all I'm offering is the truth, nothing more. Follow me.
A common misconception among people is that any rule or regulation that governs them falls under one category, law. But there are many other forms of law that people abide by without realizing that they simply do not apply to them. Another misconception is that a nation's constitution gives us our rights. A constitution does nothing more than list the rights that we already have. We are born with inalienable rights, endowed to us by our Creator. They are not given to us, and they cannot be given away. The most a person can do with a right is choose whether to exercise it or not. Maritime admiralty law is what's known as the law of the water. It is superseded by civil law and only applies to those who willingly contract themselves into it. The definition of admiralty law is a body of private international law governing the relationships between private entities which operate vessels on the oceans. Let's look at how and why a form of law that is fashioned to govern corporations, businesses, and vessels has imposed its rule over natural human beings. This is all done through a form of word magic. A simple perversion of language has made it possible to convince people around the world that these alternative laws apply to them. One of the predominant beliefs in modern culture is that licenses, permits, registrations, and other forms of documentation are required to operate motor vehicles, use public roads, build structures and establishments, engage in free enterprise, and much more. Sadly, these beliefs are based on little to no investigation whatsoever, and are false. This belief structure is perpetuated by maritime admiralty law. This form of law was originally created to govern ships docking in foreign nations for the import or export of products and resources. It deals with banking and merchant affairs, not civil affairs. When a product is taken off of a ship and brought into a foreign land, that nation takes custody of the resource and accounts for it with a certificate. That certificate marks the birth date of that product in the custody of the respective nation. Think of why it is supposedly required to have a certificate of live birth in the first place. The Barron's Dictionary of Banking Terms defines a certificate as a paper establishing an ownership claim. So right there, we notice that everyone with a birth certificate is defined as being owned. People are used as collateral with other nations because the U.S. is bankrupt. The United States declared bankruptcy on March 9th of 1933. At this point, the U.S. began taking out loans from a private, non-government affiliated corporation called the Federal Reserve. With no money to pay back the loans, the United States began using the citizens as collateral. All birth and marriage certificates are literally warehouse receipts. Just look at the similarities of warehouse receipts and birth certificates. Both document the date of issue, a serial number, registration number or receipt number, a description of the product, and an authorized informant to notify the appropriate government agency. With all of this information being readily available, the majority of people are unaware of their involvement with maritime admiralty law. This is possible through the manipulation of language. This admiralty law changed the meaning of the word person from a natural living person to a corporation. Driver's licenses, vehicle registrations, auto insurance forms, building permits, gun permits, work permits, tax filing documents, birth and death certificates, traffic citations, and many other forms of documentation that were once believed to be absolutely necessary only apply to persons or corporations. Upon signing such a legal document, you are indirectly waiving your rights under the Constitution and lowering your status to that of a corporation that is created with the same exact name as you. The only way to reconcile your true name from the name of the corporation is to take notice that the corporation has its name in all capital letters. This is known as capitis diminutia maxima. You may take notice that your driver's license, birth certificate, social security card, insurance cards, and more use all capital letters to legally represent the corporation with your name, not you. The corporation is known as an artificial person, whereas you, the human being, are known as a natural person. This deception goes even deeper when it comes to the courts that we attend. When showing up to court, you will notice that there are seats for witnesses behind a wooden fence or barrier. The defendant must cross through the entrance to the other side of the barrier where the plaintiff and judge sit. This act symbolizes the boarding of a ship. At this time, business can be conducted in maritime admiralty law. The judge, acting as captain or banker, is responsible for settling the balance between the two sides. This is why there is always a monetary value involved in any court case. The captain is simply dealing with banking and merchant disputes. Once the balance is paid, the case is closed. To turn the court case away from admiralty law where your rights are not protected, you must avoid agreeing to represent the artificial person. This is done by stating that you are the natural person. You don't have a first or last name because those imply corporate title. In a court case, you may state that the court takes judicial notice of your Honor's oath of office. Every judge must take an oath of office to practice law, yet you must make it clear to the court and the jury that the judge is acting as judge and not banker. Remember that you are a natural human being of the earth. You are not governed by anything but your own consciousness. Laws are created within a society. The society that created the laws we see being enforced today is called the Law Society. Yet the most beautiful part of this entire deception is the fact that we are not part of the Law Society, so their laws do not apply to us.
Judges, lawyers, and law enforcement officers, they're all part of a society. Within that society, they've created their own language that's deceptively similar to English. They have these little things called statutes, acts, and regulations that seem like laws, but they really only apply to those within their society. So that basically means all the traffic violations, minimum age requirements, and everything except for damage to another person or their property doesn't really apply to the natural person.
Laws only apply to those within the Law Society. The game being played is an illusion. You can simply choose to open your eyes and reclaim the freedom that you were born with, bound by nothing but the limits of your imagination. These are just a few examples of assuring that your rights are being protected. By far, the most important line of defense against this deception is to be aware of the perversion of language, and be absolutely aware of how you form your beliefs and concepts.
Understanding words is what you really need to start doing. You need to start doing your homework and understanding words. If you put an S in front of words, it becomes swords. And that's what words are. They're cutting. They can cause you great trouble. Humans are word-controlled creatures. So we need to establish what words mean. Again, when we talk about law, there's a Roman maximum in law that says, "For he that would be deceived, let him." Simply meaning, if you are so ignorant as to be deceived, then that's your business, that's your problem. So you need to do your homework and find out what words mean. especially in relation to law and government, because there is a whole world of occultism that is operating today throughout the world, in which you use certain words, and when those words are used in a court, they don't mean the same thing at all. Understanding law and the words of law, there are two things that this planet has: water and earth, water and land. Consequently, there are two kinds of law: the law of the land and the law of water. You've heard the term law of the land, but in point of fact, that's precisely what this word means, law of the land, because it is the people who live on land. And that is opposed to something else called the law of the high seas, or the law of water. You need to understand the difference. The law of the land is the law of the culture that lives on the land. And so consequently, the law of the land is different in every country. You can do things in America you can't do in Russia. You can do things in Africa you can't do in England. So the law of the land is the law of the culture that lives on that particular land. However, there is a higher law that dominates the entire world. It's called the law of the water, or the law of the high seas. The law of water is referred to as the law of money. It doesn't matter what color you are, where you're from, or where you live. Money is money. And anytime you're doing banking or using money, you are now under the law of water, maritime admiralty. If you go back in history, in ancient history, where all of this began, back in the land of Canaan, and you probably have heard in the Bible, the land of Canaan. The Canaanites were Phoenician bloodline, and in the ancient Phoenician language, Cana meant merchant banker. The very word merchant comes from mer, M-E-R, for the sea, for water. As a mermaid, we have merchant. Merchant bankers. Let me give an example of the difference between the law of water and the law of the land. The law of water, as I said, is a law of banking, money, as opposed to the law of the custom of the people, or the law of the land. The Statue of Liberty must be put in water. It could not be put on American land as such. It had to be put in the harbor, because it's not the statue of freedom. It's a statue of liberty. Liberty is what a sailor gets when he pulls into port on a ship. He gets liberty. He's not free. So America is not the land of the free and the home of the brave. We're not free or brave, period. We're not free. This is not a free country. Now let me give you an example of how this law of the water works. Why is it that you have to go to court? People are always concerned about going to court. You go to court because you play basketball and tennis on a court. How do you play tennis on a court? You play with a racket. Why? Because that's what it is. It's a racket. And make no mistake, they do not pick words by chance. These words are very serious. They do not use words in terms with no avail. These words are very important. When you go into a court, what's the idea of going to court? It's a game, like basketball. The whole idea in a court is to put the ball back in the other guy's court. One team gets up and they throw the ball over to that team of lawyers. That team gets up and throws the ball back into their court. And consequently, it's a ball game. And the judge is wearing a black robe, so he is the referee. The judge is the referee. He doesn't care which side wins or loses, because he's going to get paid anyway. So he couldn't care less. He's merely there as a referee, and that's why he wears a black robe. And that's another interesting subject we can get into later. But the judge is a referee between two teams. The judge, we are told, rules from the bench. The word bench in Latin is a bank. Therefore, the judge rules for the bank. Where do you find banks? You find banks on both sides of a river. They're called river banks. And what does a river bank do? It directs the flow of the current sea. The juice. Consequently, your money is currency because it's the flow, the cash flow. And I'll give you an example of how this works. When a ship pulls into a harbor, all ships are referred to as female. Airships, rocket ships, sailing ships are always female. Why? There's a very good reason. Maritime Admiralty banking law says all ships are female because they're carrying items for money, and so consequently they are under Maritime Admiralty law. Admiralty is where we get the word admiral, admiral of the Navy. Let me give you an example of how this works. When a ship pulls into harbor, it parks at the dock, and it ties off at the dock. The captain has to provide for the port authorities a certificate of manifest, because yesterday the ship was not here, but this morning the ship pulled in, so it has manifested. So consequently, all the products, the $800 million worth of TVs or Toyotas, have manifested. So each one of those items coming off of that ship has come off of water. And each end, they has come in a ship. And consequently, on a ship, all ships have a captain. The word captain comes from a Latin word capital, money. So the captain represents the money that's on board the ship. And as I said, the captain has to present to the port authorities a certificate of manifest for each and every item. How much does it weigh? What color is it? How many doors does it have? Etc. And consequently, the captain presents a certificate of manifest. The ship is sitting in its berth. Wherever a ship sits when it docks is called its berth. She sits in her berth, berthing a ship. Consequently, all the items, as I said, coming off that ship represent money. They came in on water. They are Maritime Admiralty product. And this is true all over the world. Now, when you were born, your mother's water broke. And when your mother's water broke, you came out. And this is why you have to have a birth certificate, because you are a Maritime Admiralty product under international law. You are considered, your body is considered a Maritime Admiralty product. Your mother delivered you. This is why if you go to Sears and buy a refrigerator, they will ship it to you. They will deliver it. And that's why you were in your delivery room. Your mother was delivering a product. Maritime Admiralty, you came down your mother's birth canal. And once you, and as you're taking one of the televisions or the cars off the ship and it falls down and breaks, that's all right. Sometimes they're stillborn, so consequently you've lost money on that one. Therefore, you have to have a death certificate, and it's always signed by the dock. The dock has to sign your birth certificate and your death certificate. All of these words and terms are Maritime Admiralty banking words. And therefore, if you understand lawyers and judges and courts and government are all under international Maritime Admiralty law. All religions, all churches in the world operate under maritime law. This is why all churches are divided into denominations, like 20s and 50s and 100s. Serious. This is why they're called denominations, because all churches are nothing more than the product of Maritime Admiralty banking. It's an extraordinary story of occult treason, high treason and crimes against the state. Make no mistake about it, there has never been a country on the face of the earth, as far back into history as you can go, there has never existed a country in which the people rose up and demanded their right to be free. Never. The concept of human, spiritual, intellectual, and physical freedom is a totally concept that has never, ever existed on the earth. The only time that has ever come into existence was the founding of this country, where it was understood that we were sovereigns and we owned our bodies, and consequently, since 1868, we're now under International Maritime Admiralty law. Think about this, when cowboys in Indian movies, when the cowboys would ride into town, they'd get off the horse, they were wearing guns. How come they could walk into a bar carrying guns? And if two guys got in an argument, they could go out on the street and draw on each other in front of the sheriff's office, and the sheriff would do nothing. How come? How come that men could go out in the street and shoot each other in front of everyone and had nothing be done about it? The reason why is because before 1868, all Americans were considered sovereigns. And that's one of the nice things about being a sovereign, is you have the right to be yourself. And consequently, you need to understand that, in one last point I'm going to make before I introduce your speaker, that in 1868 there was a corporation founded. Anyone can incorporate a company. Well, in 1868 there was a company incorporated. And in that particular company, the founders of that company called it, they referred to it as the United States Corporation. And they stipulated that anybody who would be a member of that corporation or work for that corporation would be called not an employee, but a citizen. So today, if you are asked, are you a citizen of the United States, what you think you're being asked is, are you lawfully in this country to do business? That's not lawfully what's being asked. They didn't ask you if you were in America lawfully. They ask you a specific question. Are you, of your own volition, out of your own mouth, testifying that you are a citizen of the United States? Because in that way, citizen of the United States means you are an employee of a foreign corporation operating on international maritime law. So today, the President of the United States is the President of a privately owned company. The company is called United States. And the word president is always a word that is used in corporate law. Banks have presidents. All companies have presidents. So there's a corporation called United States, privately owned, and it has a president. President Bush is not the president of America. President Bush is the president of a privately owned company. Privately owned, out of England. And you need to understand words and terms. Because I believe that there is a divine presence in the universe that men call God, and one day that divine presence is going to move on the earth, and we're going to see freedom come back to this world. And when it does, you're going to need to understand words and terms and how they have been used to trick you.
It seems you never get to touch the topic on how to profit from the logical use of time, so you can't stop it.